Hi everyone, this is Ekta and welcome to Read a Kitab segment Instagram Live with the author. And I'm extremely excited today to have with us an amazing woman with whom we are going to have a conversation today about her brilliant book that she's written, Desperately Seeking Shahrukh. And so we are going to have Shrayana very soon with us, and I'm very excited. I'm fascinated to have her today, and she's with her. We can start off this conversation. In the meanwhile, I don't know if all of you have read the book, but this talks so much about so many things. Hi, Abhishek. How are
Hi, I'm
you?
good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine, and I'm excited to talk to Shrayana today. How about you?
I'm excited too to talk to her, her views on patriarchy and everything. I'm very excited to know.
Absolutely. I'm just going to invite her and have her with us today. So allow me a minute while I.
Hi,
Uh,
Neeraj.
okay. Okay. Hi, Neeraj. Allow me a minute so that I can invite Shrayana. Okay, there it is. Instagram is giving me moments of surprise like always. So let me just let me just have her. Okay, let me send her a request. I got a message from her, 4 5 minutes back that she is ready to join us, but I am not able to find her. Okay, well, so we will wait, and maybe I'll just write to her once again if she can join us. Um, okay, just give me a moment. Um, So, how has been your journey to read the book till the time I invite her? And hi, everyone, all of you have joined us today. It's lovely to have all of you today on this Thursday evening. And yeah, let me wait. I'm just putting in some fillers, but I'm desperately waiting for Shrayana to join us. So let me just. Okay, I'm not able to invite her. Just give me a moment. Neeraj or Abhishek, are you guys able to just invite her or add her? If you may try, I will have to otherwise disconnect this and okay, let me just. Okay, I have sent her. So, okay, let me just ask her to join. Okay, I think
Yeah,
I should be able to
she's
add her
joined, I
now.
think. Yeah.
Uh, okay, I think I should be able to add her now. I will send her a request once again, and I hope I'll be able to have her here with us today. Let me try one more time. Okay, yes, I think now I am able to invite her. Okay, all fingers crossed. Let Instagram allow us to invite her. Okay, I can't see her.
One
Can you
second.
guys?
Wait, something is up with my. Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Shreyana. How are
Hi,
you?
how are
Good,
you?
good. Good,
Hi.
I
good.
thought that you are having that moment of मुझे तो 10 देशों की पुलिस भी नहीं पकड़ सकती and I'm invisible and then you just appeared out of
Yeah,
the blue
yeah, no,
to
no.
get Shahrukh Khan.
I must confess, I hate social media and I only use it largely to promote anything related to the book. So I'm quite a novice when it comes to all this Insta Live and all this stuff.
But we are so glad to have you,
Thank
Shayana, and
you.
we are very excited to talk to you. I'm Ekta. I
Hi.
have with me Abhishek,
Hi.
and I have with me Neeraj,
Hi.
Hi. Ekta, I
and
can't
all the
see
people who've
you for some reason. I just want you to know that you've gone dark on the
Oh, is
screen.
it Abhishek and Neeraj? Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see you clearly. I
It's
can see
very
all
odd.
of
Anyway.
you.
Oh well. Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, would you want to maybe log out and I can invite you again if
Uh,
that works?
no, I think I'm a bit concerned that we're anyway. I mean, I'm hoping that this will just work. So, and at some point you'll appear.
Okay,
So
are you
let's.
able to see the comments and the other
Yes,
people who
I'm able
joined?
to see everything, and the only person I can't see is you. So it's very odd.
Okay, after this I'll send you an exclusive picture of my
Yeah,
screen.
please do because I know that I really cannot understand what's going on, but I can hear you and I can hear all your questions. So hopefully that
Okay,
will compensate for it.
great. So I hope you had a great puja session. This time, puja time, and the festivities, and how was it all about?
It was a bit mad, because my parents live in a very Bengali neighborhood in Delhi, and it's been 2 years of sort of COVID and its impacts, right? And
Yeah.
so finally, it was Pujo in its sort of full form after quite a long time, and everywhere I went in their neighborhood, it was just an ocean of people. But it was fun. I cannot claim it was relaxing. It's quite manic, but it was lots of fun, and I really enjoy. I'm not a big believer in sort of ritual, but I enjoy watching all the everyone dress up, and there's like such a lovely sense of joy, I think, around people, and so it's fun. So it wasn't relaxing, but it was lots of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we are so, so honored and so happy to have you here today. And for all the people who've joined us today from the club, we are going to talk to Shrayana today about her incredible book, Desperately Seeking Shahrukh. And
Thank you.
we are excited. We are excited. And we read this book as our book of the month. So brilliant discussion and also a lot of things to take home. But just to break the ice, Shrayana, I would like to begin this conversation by asking you that this book talks so much about not Shahrukh and so much more about women, their independence, their freedom, and that is what the title has a subtitle as. And so when you started writing this book, do you have some people around you who you would like to talk about, who kind of be act as an inspiration, of the models of standing tall to their caliber, and breaking the stereotypes, breaking the norms, and being the icon in your life.
Um, Actually, it's all the women I followed. I've spent 15 years of my life interviewing a set of women. They're still in my life. And I think one of the most important lessons I learned as a human being, forget writer, but just human and then researcher perhaps, was in 2006 when I showed up to Bapu Nagar, where the book actually starts in Ahmedabad.
Yeah.
And this is when I was a research assistant for a project with Seva. And the woman who's called Zahira in the book, her and
Yeah.
her friends, who were so bored of my typical survey questions that they said, please kuch aur baat karte hain. And I then started asking them about their favorite actor, and something one of those women said, which I didn't mention in the book, but it sort of has stayed with me forever. She said, all you people, and they used to call me Survey Wali Didi. And she said that all you people, you come, journalists and scholars and so on, and you always ask us about which politician we'll vote for, what schemes we work in, and, things about our deprivations and whether we can buy, atta, chawal, which is important. But nobody has ever asked me about my favorite actor. And I
Oh my God.
think the strength and the pleasure that all these women sought in their lives, no matter how difficult the circumstances were, I think to me that's been, I think, the most humbling lesson in my life. And I think the book is very much a product of that. And I think anytime, and when you do something for such a long period of time, I mean, it's 10 years of work and 15 years of writing, and it's not sitting in a library and just reading books. It's not archival work. It's sort of sitting and talking to people and constantly going back and forth. It can
Yeah.
be very frustrating, and I think each time I felt that, I've just drawn inspiration from the women I followed. And I think one person who had obviously a very important role to play in this book is my agent. She's apparently my agent, but to be honest, she is my PhD mentor and guide for this book. Her name's Shruti Devi. And I honestly didn't know that this book could be this book till the first draft reached her. And then, she was the first person to sort of touch it, edit it in that sense. And I owe her a huge debt. She's an amazing woman, and not only for the text, but just for who she is. And I drew a lot of comfort and confidence from her. So it's all the women who I think have been involved in the process of the book, honestly, who actually everyone is interviewed, from my first employer to the first professor who taught me feminist economics. I mean, everyone is in the book. And so they're all sources of inspiration.
Amazing. And the book talks about so many wonderful women and their journeys, their challenges. That gives a lot of gravitas to the book and the research that has gone in it, and how all of these things came up to become a book, and with a misleading title, Desperately Seeking Shahrukh. So when I first saw this book on the been coming out, and there is so much talk about this book, I thought that I'm definitely going to read this, because this is going to be another fangirl
You need to
book, which
speak up a
would
bit.
have.
You're a bit soft. Yeah.
Okay. So can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear it.
Okay. All right. Sorry for the bad throat, but yeah. So I was saying that, this comes out, when this book came out, I saw it and I thought that I'm definitely going to pick this up, because I am going to read more about Shah Rukh Khan from a fan girl who would have written this book, who's like, kind of dying to meet Shah Rukh, just like I am a diehard fan of Shah Rukh Khan. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to read all those incidences. And when I read the blurb, I was taken aback, and I thought, no, this book is not about only Shah Rukh Khan. And Shah Rukh Khan is very deliberately placed, as one of the central theme around, which the story revolves. So fantastic, way of presenting this.
Thank
And
you.
I think on the same lines, Neeraj has a question which he wants to ask you.
Yeah, so talking about the titles also, we did have an author, Bonnie Garmas, and her book also was titled Lessons in Chemistry, and I was like, do I really want to read? It was a novel. It was a fascinating work
Yeah.
of fiction. Yours is a very deeply researched work of on patriarchy. And I'm an English language teacher, and I was having this conversation as I was actually trying to recommend your book to some of my the Gen Z, for the lack of better word, or the teenage audiences. My question to you is, how many more such books need really to be written to change the narrative? Because for everything that I cited from your book, there were at least two or three so-called rational counterpoints saying that, oh, there's not so much wrong about patriarchy, and feminism is taking it to some very extreme end. And I was like, no, please pick up the book, read. And so I was just kind of wondering how many more such works like yours and works like Lessons in Chemistry are needed actually.
My sense is, as many experiences that there are and people want to convey, there will be that many books. And I think the history of this kind of patriarchy is so long, entrenched, and deep, and continuing, right? That I think it will continue to find voice. I think wherever there is loneliness, wherever there is, I forget who said this, but they said writing is always coming from an act of betrayal. I mean, that you feel betrayed by society. And I think as long as people feel betrayed and people feel lonely, people will want to express themselves, and they will have things to say. So I can't answer, about how many more books, because I actually honestly feel that there should be as many books as there are experiences.
Absolutely.
And, given such a diverse country that we come from, I mean, even my book is just sort of one slice of, I think, the larger pie. And I think there's so much text out there, right? And I hope that that grows as our society also goes through its own churn. I think the text will also reflect that. But I must confess, I think somewhere in your question is also this sort of lingering question of, when will some people get it, right? That they need to maybe
Yeah.
sit with themselves and take their sexism or casteism out for dinner and talk to it and figure out what's going on with it. To be honest, the one thing I have learned from the experience of this book is that's a very tough one to do because, I realize, for example, you must be one of the very few men who've read the book. It's a book that has had, I mean, mashallah, it's done well, but it is very much a women's book. I think it has been read by women. And strangely enough, you would think that, men should read it. But, I've had so many well-intentioned men tell me, oh, basharo ko kyun dala? If it was just a serious book about, I don't know, like fandom for sport, it would be taken much more seriously, I think, by a certain kind of man. Without realizing that that in itself is an expression of just deep patriarchy, right? Just gushing
Absolutely.
out of them. So I realize it's a long uphill battle, but I think, the more experiences there are, I think some will touch others and some will reach someone or the other. I do know with this book what has happened though, and I really did want this. I knew that it was going to be read by a lot of young women who are probably the first in their families to sort of, try and find a partner on their own, try and find jobs on their own, try and stand on their own 2 feet. And
Yeah.
I think there's a loneliness in that. And I think the book speaks to that and sort of tells everyone who's read it, probably man, woman, irrespective, whatever, whichever sort of notion you conform to around sexuality and gender. But I think it sort of tells us that we're all in this together, right? We're all in this loneliness together. And I hope more
Absolutely.
straight men, would pick up the book and read it. But I'm also not holding out my breath. I've seen, and in fact, funnily, I do think the book is sort of, it's surprising because I've been studying actually the non-fiction English reading market in India for my next book. And one of the things I realize is most of these books are written by men, blurbed by men, rewarded by men, sort of it's just men, 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 men. And I think Meryl Streep had this wonderful quote where she said, "Women speak men," and even the women that these guys are reading, I think it's largely women who speak that language, right? And I call them
Absolutely.
military history uncles. They're like different kinds of nonfiction uncles out there. And this book is not, this is not a book. I mean, I can tell this is a book that makes that kind of uncle very uncomfortable. And to be honest, initially it used to bother me, but now I'm actually very proud of it. So I think we have a long uphill battle, and I think the more books and more voices there are and different ways it's expressed, perhaps it'll all accumulate to change. But I'm very hopeful.
So, Shrayana, while you were talking about this entire, fiasco of only women reading it, and all the men writing, all those narratives, I was just kind of thinking about this book, which I read this year, and I thought I was very late for reading that book, which is by Rebecca Solnit. Men Explain Things to Me.
Yeah.
And I think that is such an incredible narrative, and I think every man on this planet should kind of pick that book and read, because it very bluntly talks about how men are kind of taking the charge of things they have no idea about. And I
Yeah.
think this book of yours also does justice to that statement, because there is so much that is happening out there and men want to. So we are not smashing men here, wherein a lot of people say that, but there is this certain tribe of men who are out there, and they are present in every home, every place you go, and you find them, and they are so proud of their masculinity. And I think that is what we all need to break. That is all what we all need to also kind of understand, and they need to understand. And this book is a perfect example of talking about those narratives and how those narratives needs to be counterattacked. So thank you for writing this
Thank you.
book.
Thank you.
I,
One thing I do want to say one thing though, which is that one of the things, and now that, for my next book, I'm interviewing men. And the one thing I do want to say is I don't think, I think this whole social construct we've set up, and I think the economy has a huge role to play in this. We keep talking about
Absolutely.
norms, but I think it has a lot to do with jobs, with housing markets, with safe spaces, and different factor markets in a way, the way we describe it. And the thing is, a lot of those markets, right, have been designed by typically upper caste elites. And it's funny, I was looking at some of the regulations about housing rules or how you decide someone's work is worth a certain wage rate. And you realize that it's actually people who've been to almost like 6 or 7 sets of schools, like it's an old elite that has sort of set up the cognitive framework of so much of what guides our economy. And I think the one thing I've realized is it doesn't make it's really brutal on women, but it's equally brutal on men. And I think if we realize that it would be mutually beneficial for us to sort of to question and re-examine some of both, I think the healthier it will be for everyone. So to me, it's not, I think men are as lonely in this as women are. It's just that the shape of the loneliness is very different. And I'm very cognizant of that. And I think increasingly that I think, we've set up these mechanisms, especially in a country as unequal as ours. It's just so precarious for most people, most human beings. It just doesn't matter. And I think the question about, how do we sort of change and shape that? That's actually why I'm a big believer of women entering the economy, because I don't think you're going to change, healthier masculinities won't bloom unless women also start to behave differently. And, there's studies that show that once women take up jobs, when women step out of the home, they produce sons in particular who have very different ideas of masculinity, of what is considered, appropriate for a man to be and do. And so I do think the economy is going to perhaps be the root of some of these changes, so that men can be, better fathers, maybe enjoy more caregiving. I do think men would enjoy that. And women can perhaps take up more of a role outside and feminize some of our decision-making spaces. And we start to shift that. But I do think the economy and jobs will play a very central role in that.
Absolutely.
I have a question. It is more about the book and one of the characters. So there's a very interesting character, Gold, in your book. So I was just wondering, if suppose now Gold was a fictional character, how would you have imagined the climax of her story?
Oh God, firstly, I can't, because there's a reason I wrote nonfiction. It's because I don't have that imagination. I think you'll have to ask someone else. I cannot write, even if I've been threatening to write fiction for some time. And even if I do write it, I have to be very honest, it will draw very heavily on everything that I see around me. I'm just that, I don't have that talent. I have a very different kind of talent, perhaps. But she is, I do have to say, with a story like hers, when everyday life is just, in our country, is just so fascinating. I don't think I need to imagine, a climax or an ending for her, because, what a beautiful story she's written for herself, right? And one of the things actually that I was very, very dear to me through the project of this book was, I was very tired of this sort of narrative around women in India where, the women we always write about are sort of badass, sort of heroes, right? So they've won medals and they're like out there, winning accolades in public life, our political leaders, our business leadership, and, women who are sort of celebrated. And then you have women who are victims of brutal crimes. And I think we talk about that a lot, right? But I think there's this giant missing middle of the narrative, people like, including myself, including Gold, including, none of us are winning accolades, but I think all of us are pushing up against social norms in our own ways and trying to change things. And in the case of Gold, it's, to try and be single and find a husband on her own and to have a job of her own. And, in my case, it could be, thinking about different ways in which, one gives care to their elderly aging parents as a single woman, right? I think it's different depending on where you are. But to me, that was a really interesting thing, which is, Claudia Goldin recently won the Nobel, and she has this wonderful paper, which I encourage everyone to read. She's the third woman, I think, to win it for economics. And the book is called, the paper is called A Quiet Revolution in the American Economy. And I think that idea of a quiet revolution really appeals to me, maybe because it's just who I am. It's the things, the questions that I'm interested in. I'm very interested in that missing middle, where I think these quiet revolutions have happened in women's attitudes towards their own selves, towards men, towards jobs, so much has changed, you know, even within the depressing statistics. And I wanted to, you know, I wanted to honestly pay respect to these women who are in this missing middle, who'll never be on magazine covers, you know, they'll never,
True.
it'll never be glamorous. Like history uncles will not want to read their stories unless they're like victims of something, or the, you know, winning awards. But the interesting thing to me was, you know, to realize that in all the communities I've mapped, you've seen this, you know, from the forests of Jharkhand to the villages of UP to the homes of, you know, small town India, in urban India, all these women have worked so bloody hard to create the change in their families. And you can see it. Their daughters are growing up different because of it. Their sons are growing up, their brothers are different because of it. And I think to me, I'm very interested in these sort of quiet pockets of social change. And I think even in the future, that'll just be what I think my work will focus on. And I think to me, gold is just such a beautiful example of that, right? That how do you sort of forge change? She's a revolutionary, but she's a quiet revolutionary. And yeah.
Thank you.
So amazing. And Shrayana, I have a very interesting question for you. And so the question is that, you know, just let's imagine. Now, you already told that you don't have that imagination, but still, I would ask you to let's imagine that, you know, in a parallel world, you know, we are going to be okay with some things in patriarchy. Okay. And so, what do you think? How would that change the narrative? Or what are those aspects you think would be kind of okay to be acceptable with these
None.
history uncles or
No, none. I have no,
I like that.
you know, I have to say that, you know, what is it that all these women, at least in the book, interpret? None of them knows the word feminism. I really want, I mean, other than, you know, some of the women in the first section of the book, which
Correct.
is the elites, English speaking women, nobody really knows the language of feminism. Nobody even speaks the language of patriarchy. Those are not terms that are sort of, you know, familiar. But I think for all of them, they interpret what feels unfair. And what fundamentally feels unfair is two things. One is they see their brothers can just go out and giggle at a film star and they can't, right? And the other thing that feels fundamentally unfair is that why is it that these women who are trying so hard to just find love for themselves and feel loved in themselves, not even from the outside world, are constantly appraised and constantly told that you better hustle for it. So you better have, you know, X waistline to earn love. I call it Laveria in the book. You must, you know, give up your job and be the best dutiful caregiver to earn love. You must be very careful about the way you dress, where you go, adhere to all these norms, you know, this whole idea of Maryada, if you want to be loved. And why is it they feel in their families that men never seem to have to hustle that much for love? You know, when men earn money and they are loved, but when women earn money, they are not loved. I actually say this, like the per rupee price, you know, the cost of love is very different
absolutely.
across genders. And so to me, you know, patriarchy gets interpreted into this idea of Laveria, you know, for all these women, that if you're constantly being told that you're not worth it and you will always have to behave in a certain way and bargain for that worth, I reject that. And I don't think there is any part of at least my imagination that can say that that is an okay way of being for anyone, right? I think we should be so much more accepting of each other.
Yeah.
And I think what all these women are fighting for is almost to create a room of their own, or a house of their own, or a ticket of their own, or a mobile phone of their own, where they can just express love for themselves and to find networks and sisterhoods and solidarity that will allow them that. So no, I don't think there's anything in that shape of you know, the world which I think I find at all I can't negotiate with. Having said that, though, I am a realist, and you see in the book all the women. And you know, one of the things that irritates me so much when people talk about the book sometimes is they'll sort of say, oh, but you know, this is a story of all these women who have these very flighty notions of love and romance, and they're like into this very soppy idea of a celebrity, and they're chasing a celebrity, and they're such fools, right, for this hyper romantic, unrealistic ideal. But actually, when you read the book and if you read it closely, you'll realize all of them are such realists and so pragmatic. I mean, they may love the idea of Shah Rukh Khan, in the kitchen, or Raj in the movies, or whoever else, or the interviews he gives. But in real life, they're all pragmatic. They don't want to marry a Shah Rukh Khan. They know that that is a mythical structure. They want to be him. They want, his success. They want his economic mobility. They want his independence. They want to feel as loved and confident as he portrays himself to be. And I think to me, that's the fight, worth having with patriarchy, to just love oneself and to create economic structures. And I do think policy can play a huge role in this to help people love themselves better. I mean, if, we set up mechanisms where women could live on their own, maybe they wouldn't have to endure unhappy marriages and an unhappy mating market, but that's just not an option that many women in our country have. And so I think if we start to think a little bit carefully about the way policy can allow for this, to me, this is very much a book that's pushing for that. I think there are policy levers to adjust and to deal with when it comes to loneliness, love, our emotional lives. And the book is a glimpse into that. So no bargaining with patriarchy and no shaping, no world in which that's acceptable.
Yeah, this reminds me actually, basically, I think it's really time we should have a Ministry of Happiness, just like you are, saying for loneliness also. And I was also kind of wondering that when you talk about, there is nothing that we are ready to negotiate, right? And you also used a very, subtle, allusion. I also saw a room of one's own, which is such a rational voice by Virginia Woolf, right? Now, talking about rationality, when I actually am trying to initiate conversation, especially with my, teenage, students, the moment I, produce one fact after the other, and I'm trying to be as rational as I can ever be, or as rational as you are in the book also. I just don't know where to begin, because then I'm branded as a little delusional, or or you are. So I was just kind of wondering, because it's very important for all of us also to have that vocabulary. So
Yeah.
I would really want to know from you.
To me, I think the simplest thing that always seems to have worked is I always ask everyone to just go back to their homes and observe how many minutes their male members of their family spend in the kitchen. I think to me it just always starts with that, because this idea, and I think it's such an important cognitive shift that we need to make, which is we would have no economy. I mean, all these guys wearing suits and sitting in Davos would not be fed and nourished had it not been for their mothers and for all the care that women have provided. And yet when they go to these events, they seem to forget that all that work needs to be valued. And I think, to me, the most important thing we can tell young people, because I realize the terrain is such that defensiveness is high, people are socialized in certain ways in families, but I think the first thing to do is just to open up our eyes about the division of labor in our everyday life within our own homes. Who is cooking for us? Who is cleaning our toilets? Who is doing these things in our homes? And I think if we just get young kids to just open their eyes, look up and see that just within their own homes, I think we could have very difficult and interesting conversations, right, about the dynamics of labor and intimate labor and domestic labor, and how it sort of layers onto all the social divisions in our country. So I think that's a tool that seems to have worked for me, and it produces some very interesting results. I will tell you though, and I have hilarious stories about presenting the data from this book at various events, so for book events. I mean, I've been now, like, the book has been out, it's coming up to be 2 years. And what's fascinating to me is just the defensive sort of crossed arms that I see from a lot of straight men who feel very attacked by the book. And so honestly, I mean, I realize young people actually might still be willing to engage, especially with the data, because the data, it's so obvious, when you realize 87% of the economy is masculine. Look at the wage gap. India is in the bottom 5 when it comes to men helping in housework, bottom 5 when it comes to women's economic participation. Even right now, when our employment rate is going up, it's largely growing up because of rural areas and unpaid help. And that's captured by the statistics. So to me, I think 2 things always help, which is, one is just notice your intimate sphere and who's doing what in the intimate sphere. and have a conversation with young people about it. And I think the second is the data. I mean, and if we can bring the data to kids and teenagers or whoever else in more interesting ways than just, the dull ways that data is often presented, I think I do feel their eyes can open up. And I actually am very hopeful on that front. I think, our youth are much more engaged on these questions. As for some people, that no matter what, their lives are not Bayesian. They won't change their mind. And, one of my favorite examples of this was I was on a panel presenting some data, and someone next to me is a gentleman in his 50s, Indian gentleman, who said, we were talking about how there's this huge permission culture in India where the data shows that women need to constantly seek permission to just go out, right? And the data is very obvious. It's in the book. Even to a health clinic. And he turned, and when we were talking about this, and he said, oh, maybe they do it out of politeness, because they feel like they need to tell their family. And, the need, and I understand it, the need to sort of say, well, maybe not all our norms are as terrible as they are portrayed to be, and maybe they're not. But I do know that there is a certain section of our country that's just not ready to have this debate because they're too comfortable. There's no incentive. I mean, as an economist, I would just simply say there's no incentive for them to have this debate. But I think for young generations who are thinking about entering the job market, who are thinking of perhaps living and loving differently, I think there are tremendous incentives for them to engage with this. So I think those two, data and the intimate sphere, notice your home, I think that would be very useful.
And before we go to the next question, I must really say the number of times I must have rolled my eyes while reading the book. I was like, isn't it so obvious? Like, what else do you need?
Yeah, no, it's not obvious. We still remember this is a country where we're still debating whether we should have a caste census or not. So, even counting is a debate. So I've realized and not to sort of, I just think that we are a very divided country, and I think you're seeing that in so many ways, be it gender, be it so many social divisions. And I think that's just for all of us to see all around us.
I like your term, feminist economy. I think it speaks so much. I was also wondering there's so much research gone into this. So there are two things actually. Whilst you were doing the research, did you ever think you're going to be writing this book? And secondly, like something in your research would have even surprised you, I think. What would that be?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thanks for noticing the research. To be honest, I never ever thought that Mr. Shah Rukh Khan would open so many windows of conversations into people's lives. I had a sense, okay, so maybe, the purchasing power story, I understood that I was trying to tell the story about how difficult it is for women to just have money to watch him, right? And the public space to watch him. So I could understand the story about accessing media and purchasing power and money. But the fact that it would end up becoming all these women telling stories about how society and the economy are making them feel very lonely and unloved. And I describe in the book that each time they look to him, be it his interviews, and everybody has their favorite interview, their favorite song, their favorite cutout. There's the character who's a Delhi accounts officer who, maintains a scrapbook with all his sort of quotes from interviews and so on. He's a self-help guru. And the fact that they all turn to him in these moments of such deep loneliness, and then that would lead to these conversations about, well, why were you feeling lonely? I never expected that. I mean, I did not expect that he would sort of become almost a research anchor into these very difficult, intimate conversations into very different women's lives. I mean, these women are very different from me. And so that I must confess that really surprised me. I think it went beyond. And to be honest, I think I had thought if I was going to do something, it would be an academic paper around purchasing power, finish it in a year and a half, and that would be it. And, from 2006, next thing I know, it was 2015, and I still hadn't finished talking to these women, and we were still talking about Shah Rukh, right? And so I think that really surprised me. I mean, the power of him as an icon as a research method to enter into people's lives. And that I thought was really beautiful and very surprising. What was your other question? You asked me what surprised me, and then you asked me something else before.
Whilst you were doing the research, did you ever think that you're going to be writing a book?
No,
Or
never. I have to tell you, I'm not a trained writer. I am not a journalist. I had no aspirations to be a writer. And I never thought, I mean, I thought I would always write, sort of boring bureaucratic reports for sort of academia or like development agencies and so on, which I enjoy doing. I learn a lot from it. But I never thought that I had a book of this kind in me. But what I was doing was I now realize it. I write every day and I journal every day. And I was having these conversations and I was recording them and I was constantly keeping them. And honestly, and I'm very transparent about it in the book, I thought it would perhaps be an academic paper about just, women in Rampur in particular, or the women in Babunagar. But then when I shared that paper with a few mentors and colleagues, they read it and they thought, well, this could be expanded out and this could be a book. And then one thing led to the other, and I kept collecting stories and I kept interviewing people and I kept expanding, I think, the class profile of the women who were in the book, because earlier it was very much supposed to be a book just about the precariat, and then it opened up. And so that, I think, was, I had no idea what I was doing. And I'd be lying to you if I said to you I had some grand research design in mind. I was having conversations because I really enjoyed these conversations. I was recording them because that's something that was natural to me. I did seek permission because many of the women I met, particularly from the precariat, are through research projects that I was part of. So I had to sort of, follow ethical norms associated with those projects. So I had to send back whatever I was finally writing. And then that was a very interesting experience in and of itself, because them engaging with the book and the text. And yeah, no, I had no idea. And now, when I look at it still, I still can't, I keep joking, I'm a reader, I'm not a writer. I still can't, I think that you're supposed to have this kind of writerly persona, and I still, I don't even know what that is. I can't, I have a hard time, sort of even thinking about it, but it's out there. And I do think now when I take a step back, I just feel that, it was an act of love. And I think my next book as well, I mean, I just, I care about certain things that I want to ask and write and do. And then I just followed that instinct. So to be honest, I had no idea. It was only when it reached Shruti, my agent mentor, PhD guide, that I realized that this was a text. Before that, I had a sense that it was something, but I wasn't sure. And it was her who finally read it. And I think she helped me see it as a book.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. So before we actually move on to the we do have a rapid fire round for you as well. But unfortunately,
before Neeraj, you ask a question, may I request both of you to, especially Shrayana, if you can just tilt your camera a little, because we are not able to see you, in entirety. So the upper.
Can you see me now?
I can see you. Yeah, okay. Yes. Better.
I still can't see you at all, so I don't know what is going on, but that's fine. I mean, we are just, and I have to say, what you are now discovering is how useless I am at Instagram. It's a medium that I have only discovered to, essentially talk about the book and just put up, cover about the book and put up nice pictures for my mother, who obsessively stalks my Instagram, essentially, and some friends who are far away. My mother is more, I think, adept at all of this than I am, and I have to be very honest and transparent about the fact that I'm quite useless. But I'm very impressed that I am able to join the live and you can hear me and we can have this conversation. So something as simple as that. And yeah, as long as you can see me in contours or something, then that's
so. Shrayana, don't worry. When we started this conversation, we were not able to add you, so I blamed it all on Instagram to all the viewers.
Okay,
very good. Instagram is playing a glitch.
Yes,
I'm glad we can all be Insta useless together, so it's good.
Yeah. So basically, I actually also wanted to ask you about your next book. Is it something you can talk to us about,
Yeah,
and what is it about?
yeah, of course. I'm so I mean, the the thing is, actually, there's a primer of the book, sort of what it will potentially be. That's already out. It came out in Mint for the year-end issue, December, just the year that went by. It's going to be called The Tyranny of the Indian Uncle, and
Wow.
I
I
want to
already like
call
the
it.
title.
I love the
Thank you.
title.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I'm interviewing middle-aged men in their late 40s, 50s, maybe early
Oh my
60s.
God.
And I'm very
Oh
curious
dear
to
God.
understand, how
All the
I
best.
can tell. I mean, it's thank you. No, but it's, I've already learned quite a bit about, I think, the interview process in the world. But what is fascinating to me is that I only do work that's longitudinal, so I'll follow people and repeatedly interview them in time, much like the Shahrukh book. And what's fascinating to me is when I was doing the Shahrukh book, it was such a struggle to find time to interview people because all these women, they just never had time. It's so hard to find safe spaces, free time. Whereas these guys, they just have all the time in the world, and it is amazing. I'm thoroughly enjoying it because it's so easy, and and some of them I'm so fond of, and they're so open, and they have all the time, and they're so giving, and I'm having sort of whiplash on the sort of research process because I can't quite believe it is going. It's so easy, and they have time. They will give you time, and it's easy as of now. But the broader point, I think I want to sort of mirror this story about what's happening to middle-aged men, with the fact that economists are very interested in these ideas of making markets. I mean, markets are not given; they are made. Someone has decided that an in-flight attendant will be paid lesser than a pilot, right? For example, just someone has decided that.
Correct, correct.
And I think I'm very interested in the role that fairly, elite men of a certain age and vintage have, the role they've played in making these markets. So that's why I'm looking at nonfiction books, because one of the examples I keep giving is I do think the English nonfiction market is a great example of this, which I think is changing now slowly and steadily. But it's a great example of it, along with so many others, right? So that's broadly what the book is. So if you feel oppressed by an uncle, reach out to me. The email is republicofuncles@gmail.com. I'm very serious. I'm collecting stories. I put out a call. So if anyone feels they want to talk to me, even about what they understand an uncle is or whatever that means, please, you can read the piece in Mint, reach out to me, republicofuncles@gmail. I will at some point come back to you and hopefully interview you.
I love that Republic of
La-
Uncles. I was just wondering if all the men who were so angry with you with this book, I wonder what is going to be like with
Yeah,
the
no,
tyranny of
my
Indian
my
uncle comes out.
No, my father jokes, with my job, I have to sort of, you rotate out, right? You sort of move out. And my father keeps joking. He said, well, it's good. Perhaps by the time it's out, you'll be sort of, in another country. They'll rotate you out. Um, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's an interesting, but it is a fact that it's just fascinating to me to see the reactions of, just how gendered the reactions to the book have been. And I think also this sort of immediate dismissal of women's interests in a matinee idol or a big superstar, right? Because I'm convinced that, if I had anchored it on something that was more palatable, to sort of elite tastes, it would land differently. But to be honest, I'm really happy that, because had it not been for Mr. Khan, none of these conversations would have happened. So to not acknowledge that, I think would be a disservice to the people I interviewed and to just what happened in the field, right? It's not like these women opened up to me about their lives just because they wanted to talk to me. I'm not special. I think the reason they opened up to me is because we were all talking about him. And I think it is the power of some icons and some concepts where, he is no longer a person, he's become a concept. He's become a prism. And I think people use that and then they talk about themselves. And I think it's really moving. So yeah, I'm just grateful for that. He
I
is
was
the
just
greatest
thinking while
anti-uncle we have in the country right now. So I
and
really
I was just thinking while you were talking about this that while I was reading this book, and like me, many other women who must be reading this book must be, there's always a phase, whenever Mr. Khan is kind of talked about, there's a smile, that automatically comes on your face, and you don't realize whether you're reading it on a flight or or a rickshaw, or you're just sleeping and you're, about to sleep, and you're just reading this book, and you are there's a smile that just comes to your face. I'm just thinking about the Republic of Uncle. Women are going to bawl on that book.
Inshallah, we'll see. But yeah, do read the primer. It's very much available. If you just Google the tyranny of the Indian uncle, it will pop up, so you will have a sense of what it might look
Absolutely,
like.
absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Definitely gonna do that, and we'll pass on that to the club as well. I'm
Yeah.
sure people will have a great time reading that. But just to tell you, Shrayana, a lot of men in the club have read your book, and they have praised it to
Oh,
the
thank you.
skies. So
Thank you. I'm really no, I'm really happy to hear that, because I do see, I can see now there is a shift. I mean, I can see more men picking it up. I just, I just hope more men, it's not just about this book. I just hope more men read women, I do think there was a study out there. I feel it was in the Guardian, or I'm not quite sure where it was, but it basically showed that even abroad, men barely read women. Women read men all the time. And I just hope that that starts to shift. And if the book plays some role in that, I'm happy for that.
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. And before we kind of end this segment, there is a rapid fire. It's an easy one, not like Coffee with Karan, but yeah.
Oh God.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
just wanted to ask you, Shrayana, what are you reading currently?
I'm reading Monogamy by Adam Phillips.
Oh, okay, great.
And the second question is, who is your favorite author and why? Or favorite authors?
Actually, I have the vanity to offer one. She's my hero. Her name's Vivian Gornick. She taught me how to write. She writes memoir, and I think that you can write about the self, and yet it cannot be narcissistic, and it can be rigorous and such strong feminine writing. She's my favorite, Vivian Gornick, without a doubt.
Okay. And my question would be, what's your favorite book / books?
Oh gosh, that is hard. It was Oscar Wilde's birthday, I think a few weeks ago, and I love especially De Profundis, the book that he wrote when he was in jail. There's something very powerful about that. I love all of Vivian Gornick's books. I'm obsessed with Vivek Shanbag, translated by Srinath Parur, both the books. I just finished Sakina's Kiss recently, and I just thought it was just astonishing. I would encourage the club to read it. I have been obsessed with Kamala Das. I have been obsessed with Hindi writers as well. So yeah, no, this is very hard. I can't. But the book, it's a really tough one. But the book that most recently, I think, the one that I finished last that just left me really gobsmacked was, I think, Vivek Shanbag's Sakina's Kiss, which I just read, and it was just really lovely. And I don't have a favorite book. I have too many. But the book that I do think made me feel, maybe that's why I think she's my favorite, is Vivian Gornick's book, The Odd Woman in the City, is about her being in her 60s and just walking around New York, and it's memoir about just her life in New York. And it's just beautifully written, and it really opened up something in me when I was reading her. So maybe I'll just mention that book in conjunction to how much I admire her.
And you
Wonderful,
already,
wonderful recommendation.
yes, absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
you already answered my, last question by what recommendation you would want to give, to read a kitab club readers as Sakina's Kiss. But would you like to make another recommendation?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. If you guys like reading economics, I highly recommend. Have you read Poor Economics by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo?
No.
Not yet.
No. It's accessible. You could try it. It's sort of
Oh.
it's econ. I'm giving you two options. I'm giving you fiction, which is Sakina's Kiss, and I think for non-fiction, I would encourage you to maybe think about picking up Poor Economics. It's about the lives of the poor. It's about the economic lives of the poor. What do we mean by the poor, and what does that look like? And it's written by two phenomenal economists, and I absolutely just love. I'm not sort of gung ho on the methods of randomized controlled trials. That's what sort
Hmm.
of some of the studies that
Hmm.
they've worked on are. But I just love actually the profiles, the descriptive profiles of people, and you learn a lot about the richness of the economy. Because I really believe. I mean, this is sort of. I really believe so much of what you learn when you study economics and when you're doing these studies in the field is actually stuff that never gets into the formal paper. It's all the footnotes, it's all the stories. And actually what's really beautiful about Poor Economics is it's got theory, but it's got all those stories as well. So maybe that.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
because
so
there are a
much.
lot of non-fiction readers in the club, and
Great.
so I'm sure we are definitely going to pick both of these books and gonna read them. And wishing you all the very best for your
Thank
next
you.
book and all the endeavors. And thank you, Shrayana, for coming here and talking
Thank
to
you.
us
Thank you
and writing
so
this
much. It
amazing,
was
amazing
lovely
book.
talking to
It
you.
was amazing talking to you.
Amazing, amazing.
I had a blast. I don't even know where the time went. Thanks to
Great.
everyone who joined us. More power to your reading club, to everyone sort of out there. Have a great evening ahead or day ahead. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Thank
So did we.
Shrayana. And so everybody who was here watching us, we're gonna read this book. We're showing it to you again. Desperately Seeking Shahrukh. If you have not read the book yet, you are at a
you.
loss. So
Must
you
read it.
must read it. And we are also having our guest of honor in November. We are inviting Daisy Rockwell to have an amazing conversation with her, and we would love to have all of you again. And thank you so much, Shrayana, for being here and spending this amazing an hour with us. We never realized it's been an hour now talking to you.
Yes, and don't forget to send me a picture of you.
Yes. Sure. So this live would be up on Instagram, and it would be accessible to all of you who have missed this session. So please feel free to watch it. And thank you so much, Rana, again
Thank
for
you so
coming
much.
here.
Have a great day / evening ahead and take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.